Hi, hello, and welcome to According to Weeze, the podcast, where we're going to have candid conversation with the hopes of finding a way forward in community. See, we exist and experience life at the intersection of our complex identities and our socio-cultural and political systems. And let's be real, the only way to dismantle it all is to start by dissecting it. So get cozy, get comfy, and let's dive in. All right, y'all. Hello, and welcome to another episode of According to Weeze, the podcast. I'm super amped to be back for season 2 and to be joined by Shane and Tyrel from Xbooks. Hello, gents. How are you?
Hey, what's up?
Doing good, doing well.
Yeah? Okay, are you sure?
Ready.
Let's do it.
Y'all, I think they're a little nervous. They have yet to experience the Weeze coming at them. And I don't blame y'all. But for those that don't know Xbooks, actually, you know what? We're going to do a little different. So what I like to do on the show, because obviously it is a podcast and people cannot see y'all, I like to do social identifiers first. So are y'all familiar with social identifiers? Is this something that you have done before? No? All good. So social identifiers are basically your pronouns, your racial gender identity. You can go super deep and go into, sexual identity. You can go into, nationality. It's totally up to you. But basically giving the people a sense of how you engage the world based on those social identities. So for example, I would say, I'm Louiza. I am a 35-year-old cisgendered heterosexual, indigenous, Northwest African woman that lives in Oakland, California. But I got mine down. But just so that the people know, and also so that, we don't misgender by, through pronouns and so on and so forth. So Tyrel, why don't you kick us off?
Okay. So my name is Tyrel Dale. I am a cisgendered male. My pronouns are he, him. I am single. And so I am a Afro-Latino. And for the most part, when I speak with people, I pretty much just tell them I'm Black. But when I really want to get in depth, I don't like to leave off my mom. She was from Panama. Well, she is from Panama. And
shout out Panama.
Shout out to Panama. And my grandpa does, he doesn't let me forget it, and he gets mad at me every time I can't speak Spanish to him. But I tell him, just give me some time, don't give up on me. But
no, we're going to embrace all the identities. So Afro-Latino, that gets to be the identity here for sure. Shane.
Awesome. So my name is Shane Foster. Pronouns are he, him. I am a heterosexual white male that lives in Atlanta, Georgia right now.
Oh, see, it was hard. Cool. So now that we have an understanding, I would really just love to jump straight in because I think what y'all are doing with Xbooks is just so fucking dope and super necessary. So before we start getting into the why and the how we need to change the world and why everybody should care, why don't y'all tell the people, and you guys get to decide. I figure y'all know each other, so you can bounce off each other. But tell the people what is Xbooks?
Tyrel, go for it.
So what is Xbooks? I mean, just the one-liner. I mean, we give books to people that are incarcerated. We give books to the disenfranchised. We give books to people that it's hard to get resources at the end of the day. I don't even want to close it off because I really do see Xbooks growing into something where if you just want a book, you should be able to get a book. I really don't care where you're at. We're going to find you, So, yeah, that's Xbooks.
Yeah. Why books?
That's a great question. So I'll take this. Why books? Well, one, there's a shortage of books. Two, they've been proven to help recidivism numbers or recidivism statistics. Three, and this is something that we talk a lot about at Xbooks, we want to help provide an escape too while people are incarcerated. So we don't feel the responsibility to only look for one certain kind of book. I think it's our job to meet people where they are and to meet people with the kind of books, whether it's a comic book or a self-help book or a fiction or not, whatever it might be. Our responsibility or our job is to not tell you what kind of book you want to read or should read. Our job is to help hopefully provide a bit of an escape.
Yeah, I love that. So it's interesting you say that because it's actually the quote on y'all's website, the Malcolm X quote, and I'm gonna just read it for listeners. I knew right there in prison that reading had changed forever the course of my life. As I see it today, the ability to read awoke inside of me some long dormant craving to be mentally alive. One of my favorite quotes of his, y'all don't know this, the listeners know this. Like Brother Malcolm is like one of my North Star ancestors that I like look to for all the things for a lot of reasons. But that was actually the quote that when I was like reading about y'all, because a lot of people will say like, we want to help the incarcerated, like, you know, in a lot of different ways. But books and education, and then specifically that quote, I was like, oh, y'all have like honed in, right? Like y'all have like figured it out. So I would love for you to talk to people about what you were seeing, whether like the two of you or just like as a collective, right? Obviously y'all can speak for Xbooks as their ambassadors right now, but like what were you seeing in the, let's call it these social attempts to combat the negative realities that accompany incarceration? What were y'all seeing and why did y'all feel the need to use this as part of the solution?
So when we first kind of started, we started off as two kind of separate entities that came together. So we kind of have two different stories, I would say, that brought us to what we do at the end of the day.
Perfect. Tell me about both of them.
Yeah. So at least from my perspective, what brought me here was my own struggles with the criminal justice system. I myself, I'm a felon, and it's something that's in my family. I have a good amount of family who are incarcerated and pretty much across the country, you know, and it was something that was always of interest, but it was something that I never wanted to get too entangled in because honestly, I felt like just to learn it meant that I was learning something that I could possibly get stuck in, you know? Mm-hmm. It was always, you know, the fear of being a statistic.
Okay.
So we kind of came from two separate entities, and I'll let him tell his part, but it started for me. There was an article in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution back in the summer of 19, and it talked about the shortage of books in prison. And I've someone that has read a lot my entire life. I think it's a big factor in the person that I am today. I place a lot of importance on the books that I read growing up. And I believe very, very strongly that reading creates more empathetic people. And I think there are statistics that would back that up. So I read that article and wanted to do something I think like a lot of people kind of have the idea of wanting to do something. And I talked about it for months. I talked about it with some friends and I talked to my girlfriend about it, but I didn't do anything. And I remember having lunch in January of 2020 with a friend of mine, Adam Tolliver, in Atlanta. And I'll never forget this lunch, because at the end of the lunch, he goes, "What can I help you with? What's something," which is just the most incredible question to ask somebody. And he said, "What can I help you with?" And I said, "I've been waiting for you to ask that question." Went to Florida State like I did and is in Atlanta like I am and has a little bit of like a social media following. He works in finance. And he asked me that. And I told him about what I had wanted to do. And I told him that I needed to stop talking about it and do something. And so he said, "All right, let's do it. Let's do a book drive." And as we were leaving lunch that day, he put it on his Twitter and like 60 people immediately responded saying, "Hey, I have books. Like, where do I drop them off?" Which made it very real, very quickly, which I very much appreciated and needed. And that turned into collecting about 3,000 books in the middle of February, which was really cool. We just posted up at a park. It was 30 degrees and raining. I got sick the next day.
I believe it.
But it was incredible to have people just drop off books. And we had posted on Facebook pages and Nextdoor pages. And I'd actually reached out to the National Center for Civil and Human Rights here in Atlanta, which is really cool. And they were super excited to collect books. All in all, we collected about 3,000 books. That was middle of February 2020. I was working with the gentleman at the time who ran the department that ran library services for the Department of Corrections. His name was Emmanuel Mitchell. He was coming to pick up the books like the next week, and it rained. It was like pouring rain that morning. So he just said, "Hey, like, can I just come pick him up another time?" It's like, "Yeah, of course, that's no problem." And then COVID hit. And so we had no way or I had no way, because this was before I had ever even met Tyrel, no way of donating those books. So they sat in my tiny 1-bedroom apartment, took up about half of the space that I lived in.
Wait, to be clear, all 3,000 books sat in your apartment?
Yep.
Continue.
Yep. Super fun. And so I didn't know what to do with them. And it came, one of the kind of game changers for me was the protest after the George Floyd murder. And I had a friend of mine who, as the protests were happening in downtown Atlanta, and his name is Zubair, he's actually on our board, texted me and said, "Hey, do you want to go downtown and protest?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely." And we did that, and that was very eye-opening. That was a game changer for me. And around that time, I found out about a bookstore in Philly. Shout out here to Janine Cook, who owns and opened Harriet's Bookstore in Fishtown in Philly. And she was passing out books outside of her bookstore to protesters. And I thought, I have 3,000 books sitting in my apartment collecting dust. I can do this. Mm-hmm. So we went through, and we weren't just giving out like Harry Potter novels. Like I wanted to.
First of all, hold on. While we have canceled J.K. Rowling, there's nothing wrong with a good Harry Potter novel.
Fair. I'm not saying there is, but it was not.
I just don't want all of the listeners to come for you over that, because they will. They will gather by houses, and they will come for you.
Twilight. So we ended up, me and some friends, kind of sorted through the books. Again, all of this still before I met Tyrel, and collected about, I want to say 300 or 400 books. And we started going to protests and passing them out. And so many people were like, "This is awesome. Who are you with?" And I was just like, "No, I'm just passing out books." One guy, we were at the Capitol building here in Atlanta. One guy literally gave me cash out of his pocket and said, "Go buy more books and keep doing what you're doing."
That's ill.
He had all he knows, I could have pocketed that money.
Yeah.
We absolutely did not. And it felt like I was doing the right thing. I was doing the work that I had talked about, finally. And so next month, I'm at a small little get together, and a friend of mine, Justin, who's also on our board, we're going to shout out like everyone, I think.
Hey, look, everybody gets love. So everybody, you can say everybody's name.
He said, "Hey, like how'd the book drive go? Da 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 da." And he goes, "If you ever want to like help turn this into a nonprofit, like I would be honored to be on the board." And that kicked off like, okay, it's time to do this. And so we ended up getting myself and 5 or 6 others, it's 5 now, joined a board and started that process of forming a nonprofit. And that gets to Xbooks. And so we had a board, we were working on a plan, we were in the process of starting our 501c3 paperwork with the IRS, and I see Xbooks pop up. And our entire goal was like, let's get books to those people that are incarcerated. And I see Xbooks, and I'm reading through their website, and I tell Tyrel this. I was like, this motherfucker beat me to it. And so, because it was all over their website, it was something, and they had an incredible website, and their goals were amazing. And so I reached out and said like, "Hey, this is amazing. Like, can we chat?" And so Tyrel and I hopped on a Zoom, and I want to say like early September, talked for about an hour, and it was so encouraging and motivating to talk to someone who had similar goals and who had, and he said this, but a similar heart. And we got off the call, and I think like he called me back or texted me or something like that. And he was like, "What if we just joined forces?" And I'll be honest, like it wasn't my first idea, but in talking to him more and getting to meet him and getting some of our board members to meet Tyrel and to learn about his story and to learn about what he does now and all that, it just made perfect sense. And so that was late September, early October, where we kind of joined forces and kind of came to what Xbooks is today, which is 7 people that have no idea what they're doing that are starting a nonprofit. But one of the first things, and this is the last thing I'll say because I've been talking forever, but I'll let Tyrel tell his half of the story that leads up into it as well. One of the first things that we did was start a fundraiser because we knew we needed some runway. We knew we had We knew we wanted to buy books. We knew we wanted to partner with awesome organizations. We just knew what we needed to do to start a nonprofit. And so we started a GoFundMe and we raised $20,000, which was mind blowing to me. I think our initial goal was $10,000 and we just about doubled it. And I'll get into the community in Atlanta. That's definitely something I want to touch on. But that's kind of where we are. Not really where we are today. We've done some cool stuff since then. But yeah, we just ran that fundraiser from November 30th, really through right before the holidays. But that's kind of where we are today. And I could not be happier with not only where we as an organization are, but the people I get to work with. Like it's incredible. I'm so lucky to be working with these people.
That's really dope first, right? That like, I'm like, I was like, just such a cool story. And I'd love to obviously hear, Tyrel, like where you were at, how you got here and like, to the point of connecting. But my educator brain in me has to like drop just for listeners to like really understand the impact of, because you kind of said it, like the importance of books and all of that. But there's tons and tons of empirical evidence that, shows wide range of, both success as well as quote unquote academic failure by standards of, white academia, obviously, that are directly correlated to whether parents read, as well as if parents read to children, as well as if kids have books in the home. Marginalized communities and low income communities actually, like empirical evidence shows that children that come from those communities actually start first grade 2 years behind their peers. Simply based on the fact, again, whether their parents read or whether they were read to as children or whether they even just had access to books. So like, I really don't want that to be lost on people when we're talking about like why books and why, the importance of books and the impact that it can have. I want that like seed to be stuck in people's mind as we continue this conversation. But sorry, I'm gonna kick it back to you, Tyrel. So Tyrel, you were doing this whole dope ass thing. Then obviously Shane, right? Like, so same mind, same heart. You beat him to it. That's like literally the game of nonprofits is like, or like business is like, did somebody beat you to this dope ass idea? But what I love is that you were like, yo, let's do this together. And my listeners know this. Everything I literally tell people, if it's already created, right? White supremacist ideology tells us to position ourselves in competition. And that's how we lose inherently. What we need to be doing is literally saying, yo, you're already doing it. Like, cool. We need more resources. We need more hands. We need more everything. Like, how can I do this with you? So I love that y'all are modeling without even knowing it, what I like preach to like my, the people that I educate all the time. So Tyrel, talk to us. Like, we know why Shane like got on this journey and this path. Like, what was it for you? Like, what got you on the journey to start Xbooks?
I guess it was just pretty personal, So when I was a sophomore in college, I pretty much got arrested for breaking a window one drunk night. And me thinking at that point, I thought I was invincible up to that point. And so when I got caught up in this system, I realized it takes hold of you and it doesn't really care, how nice you are. I've always looked at myself as, well, however they might look at somebody else, I'm nice, I know how to talk, like I can handle it, and that wasn't the case. Nobody cared. Once I was in the courtroom, I was just kind of just another black face and just in that situation. And so I was convicted for a felony, and I was put on about 2 years of probation. And it was one of those things where I was just like, okay, I ended up having to like leave school for like a semester or two. And it really just changed my life. It changed my life. And the criminal justice system was already something that, had impacted my family. But again, when I was 19 years old, I had always looked at myself as, well, that happens to other people. That doesn't happen to me. I do things and I slip away, I make it out, And so it really just made me just kind of look a lot more into the system that had taken a hold of me and taken a hold of my family. And that led to me trying to use my little minor in African American studies to try and make
not with your little minor. No, we are going to boost that up and give it full credit. Okay.
Thank you.
Your big minor.
That's my big minor. My big minor in African American studies really led me here, and up to that point, my mom, started my life with Frederick Douglass and Langston Hughes, and we just kind of took it from there. And it's just grown from, to Toni Morrison and Angela Davis now.
Yeah. Shout out, Mom.
Love her, And so from there, pretty much while I was going through the system, I started visiting different prisons, visiting different jails, and just trying to find out what the system was like. What are the problems within the system? And I ended up finding all these different things. The same thing as Shane. I ended up reading this article in the AJC, and it talked about how just the little amount of books that are just in the prison system. And I was like, something needs to be done. But again, just like Shane, I didn't immediately do something. I just kind of noted it. I just added it to the hundreds of articles that you read in a month, that you read in a year. And, you were just like, OK, well, that's a bad thing. And then, around the times of the protests that were happening for George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and just everything that was going on during Breonna Taylor. And, you see that and it makes you want to do something, And up to that point, I pretty much had all this research that I was collecting, and I didn't know what I was collecting it for. But I just knew that I really wanted to know all of this stuff.
Yeah.
No matter if I do anything with it, I've just got hundreds of bookmarked articles ready to go, And so from there, after everything that was happening, I pretty much just made a post on Instagram, on my personal Instagram, and was just posted 20 books and just said, hey, you guys, here's just to better kind of help the moment, because I had realized that, that big minor, all of a sudden I had collected a pretty large amount of books in my room that I ended up taking to it to people. People ended up responding like, hey, like, oh, what's this book about? And I was like, I'm just going to send it to you. Don't even worry about it. I'll just send it to you, or I'll bring it to you. And it just led to all these different conversations with people. And again, I didn't know where I was going with it, but I knew I just wanted to give people the knowledge that I had realized that I had collected about everything that was going on, because nothing was a surprise to me. But I had realized to a lot of the people around me, white, black, whatever, like just wanted to understand the situation better, So I just kept giving books each week. I would post another 5 books. I'd give them away. Post another 5 books, give them away. And I was like, okay, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I knew that I wanted everybody to kind of have this knowledge. I didn't care how rich you were. I didn't care how poor you were, because I still felt like there was just a lack of knowledge about the situation, So from there, pretty much I went back to my research. I had realized that I had pretty much did a good amount of reading the year before about this organization called Liberation Library up in Chicago. And pretty much they do the same thing. And they tell people, hey, if you can replicate this in another city, do it. And I just decided to kind of take on the challenge. I was like, and they were just giving books to different facilities within Chicago. And for the most part, they were doing a lot of kids' books. And so I was like, well, I want to give books to everybody that's incarcerated. I really didn't want to limit it to kids. If anything, I want to give to kids, but I want it to be for everybody. I've always been about, just everybody kind of deserves the resources that everybody has. Put everybody on some sort of level playing field. This world already kind of puts us in such a hierarchy. If there's any way that I can kind of change that, let me just do what I can. So from there, I just started using my resources that I had met at these different prisons and jails, and started to learn what the system was, and started to learn pretty much how I'd be able to get these books into different prisons and jails. And pretty much I collected all this information. Then I finally met a friend about 2 or 3 years before this who had worked on like a political campaign with me. And I just said, hey, man, you want to give books to people in jail? And he was like, yeah, man, let's do this. He was like, yeah, let's do it. And he was like, I'll make the graphics. I was like, yeah, all right, man. I was like, I don't know how to do that. And he was like, Tyrel, I'll do anything. And he was, he's in college, and he was just like, I'll do anything I can for this. And I was like, really? I was like, I didn't know, I wasn't exactly sure. Everything up to this point has just kind of just been, just hoping for the best. And pretty much he committed himself to it over the past, I guess, since about June or July. And then I want to say up to that point, we had kind of just tried like to just give different, we were trying to meet people in different jails. We were trying to meet different wardens. Everything was kind of, we were getting hit, with just no words. We were getting our letters sent back to us. We weren't exactly sure how to go through the system. We realized that they made it a lot harder And with that, we decided to document kind of the problems that we were facing. And we were like, well, we want to combat this too, because it shouldn't be hard to get people books at the end of the day. So from there, I want to say, like, while we're in the process of going through all that, Shane reaches out and he was like, hey, man, I see what you guys are doing. We want to help too. And I was like, what is going on? And I was like, this doesn't make any sense, but we're just going to kind of keep going with it. And up to that point, we had just kind of made a little website with just some of the things that we had been working on and some of the information that we had been collecting and some of the books that we wanted to get to people that were incarcerated. And from there, I mean, story goes just as Shane said it. It's kind of becoming something bigger than anything I could have ever imagined. And I'm just glad to see it.
Yeah, that's super dope. I love there's just this moment of like two people, because y'all are both in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Like, let that not be lost on listeners. Two people in the same city that came to the same, let's call it problem-solving solution from completely different, different journeys, different paths, happen to find each other to do something really dope. Like that, like what are the actual chances of that? Like that's not a little thing. That's really not a little thing. So one, I just like want to take a second to like shout out to the universe or whatever your belief system is that conspired to bring y'all here, because that's amazing. Also, starting a 501c3 is not fucking easy, having done it. So shout out to y'all for that. But I would love for you to dig in deeper. You said something really important that I want us to talk about, that it was actually a lot harder to get people books than you anticipated. You kept running into obstacles, right? Like it shouldn't be this hard. So what is that like? What did it look like? Why was it so hard? What were you guys coming up against? Or are you still coming up against?
So they just don't tell you anything. They don't tell you what books are okay and what books aren't okay. They don't tell you,
Hold on, I want you to pause right there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So there's certain literature that is not allowed inside of prisons.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%. And the rules change just based on who's in charge.
And so it is arbitrary, and the warden gets to decide.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So in Georgia, with our Department of Corrections, they essentially have like a director of library services. This person has their own like set of rules, but that person doesn't control what books actually go into each individual jail and prison. They can just collect books at a facility that they have and then hope that the prison wardens go to that facility and get the books, which at the end of the day, these wardens aren't exactly, they're not teachers, they're not exactly, they don't see the prophecy, or they don't see how helpful books can be for what they're trying to do, which I completely don't agree with what they're doing, but I do think that everybody deserves this literature.
So to be clear, just real quick, if I say am the warden of a for-profit prison facility that benefits off of increased population and would perhaps not really want to have my inmates bettering themselves to be able to make them eligible and or more eligible or seemingly more eligible for parole, because if they exit the prison, that means I lose money, then I could very well be like, yeah, no, all of those books, the self-help books that Shane mentioned, or anything that might even perhaps aid inmates in getting their GED or degrees, anything that might better them in any kind of way, I could say no, and I don't have to answer to anybody.
Pretty much. That's exactly right.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Please continue. All right. So Shane, I see you're like, tag me in. I got some.
Exactly. Well, and as we've done this research and learned more about this issue in Georgia, there are multiple prisons in Georgia that have fewer than 4 books per person in that prison. There's one prison that has fewer than 2,000 books and for over 1,000 people. There are statistics that back this up. And I think that's one thing, in that AJC article, in working with Tyrel and learning from Tyrel more about this issue, it is an intentional issue. Like, this is not a coincidence. And that is the gap that Xbooks is trying to fill, is there's no coincidence about this. And I think that's where we can have that's where our biggest impact is going to come. And so that's all I wanted to add is just, there's research out there and we are aware of that research that shows that this is not an accident. And so that's where we're trying to fill in those gaps.
I want to take a left turn into that conversation so bad, and I'm about to. But Tyrel, I want to give you the opportunity to finish your thought because I for sure co-opted it around just like the obstacles that y'all face. And then I have another question for y'all because Shane, you just set yourself up and you don't even know it, but it's going to be good. I promise. I promise. Tyrel, go.
Yeah, so it's like there's pretty much two systems, and it's almost as if they play good cop, bad cop. The director of library services says, hey, bring me your books that I can't actually give to these people and they have to come get it from me, but they don't actually drive all the way from, at the end of the day, Southwest Georgia to where their facility is 4 hours away. And these people aren't exactly making that drive, just to go grab some books in their work van. It's just not going like that. So it's really, we're trying to learn the system. And we're having to build relationships, which is it's tough for me because it's like exactly what these people are doing, but you also have to kind of co-opt to their emotions and play to their feelings because that they make it to where it's almost a privilege to help them, and it's a mind game that that they play inside of the prison and they play it outside of the prison with people who want to help out the people that are in prisons and jails, and it's fucked.
So let's talk about that. Because it's not a coincidence. It is very intentional. One could almost say it is by design. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about what the intention is, what the design is of making sure that by we, I mean like not you, us, right? Or Xbooks, but like as a society and as a prison industrial complex, that they are limiting access to what I think books are a human right. I think learning to read is a human right. Also, I'm going to plug in here just a little historical note for context for listeners that don't know. It is actually not by mistake that I wanted to bring this conversation of books and incarceration into, like my podcast realm, because we know that the prison industrial complex is an extension of the slave industrial complex, and during in the enslavement of kidnapped Africans, reading was 1,000% not allowed and was punishable by death. And even up until through Jim Crow South, the segregated schools did not have proper books. If they had books at all, they had to share very limited resources. And then even post, desegregation of schools, there was still, once again, a limit on access to the basic necessities to learn books. So this has a very, very, yes, it is by design, but it is also deeply rooted in history, and it is deeply rooted in a very long-standing history of the mental oppression of marginalized folks in this country. So I want to bring that into the conversation for folks who might not have that awareness before I kick it off to y'all so that you can basically prove my point. But please, go ahead.
No, I think that's a fantastic point, and I think these prisons are, not that they ever were, but they're not designed to help those individuals not come back. They are almost designed.
What? You mean it's not actually about helping people get better?
Well, and no, of course not at all. Obviously. But I mean, even to the point of, so I was just went back and kind of looked at the AJC article, and I mean, almost 2/3 of people that are currently incarcerated in Georgia right now are Black. Half of prison libraries in Georgia have no books on Martin Luther King Jr., and 2/3 of them have no books on Malcolm X. That is by design. Every prison offers Bibles, but only 2 offer Qurans. That is by design. A Georgia prisoner will not find any books on the Attica prison uprising. That is by design. We are hopeful and confident, actually, that we can start to get these books in prison. I feel very strongly about that. I think one of the relationships that is going to be very beneficial is, so there's a new director of library services for the Georgia Department of Corrections, and Tyrel has been working with her in seems a little bit more open to what we're trying to do and trying to get those kind of books in prison. And like I said before, that's not all we're trying to do, but it's absolutely part of what we're trying to do. To your point, this is all by design. I mean, I could not have told you that a couple of years ago, but part of what Xbooks does and part of Xbooks, the impact it has had on me is like, it's on me to do that research. It's on me to do that work to figure out what I did not know growing up, especially as a white male in a very white supremacist culture. Like that was not something that was offered to me. But that's not an excuse. And that is, I'm dealing with that as it comes. But when I say eye-opening, that's just part of it. And so for me, like, one of the reasons I love what we're doing is I get to actually learn. Like Tyrel talked about, just the importance of constantly learning and pushing yourself to learn. And that's something that Xbooks is forcing me to do. And I'm very, very appreciative of that. But to your point, to get back to it, like everything you said it's all by design. And that's, again, another gap that I believe and am very confident in that Xbooks can at least start to fill.
Yeah. I also, again, so my listeners know that I do this. Like, I drop nuggets. The intentional missing books, we'll just call them, right? Like, intentionally not including certain literature is also OG slave industrial complex handbook, because the slave Bibles very, very explicitly did not include any passages about slave uprisings, right? Like, not a lot of folks know that. That was on purpose. You cannot, well, we should, but let me say this differently. The system cannot afford to give those that it has intentionally disenfranchised and oppressed the guidebook to their own liberation. And so it leaves those bits out. So I'm not surprised that, right, like that MLK, Malcolm X, I promise you, like, Asada's books aren't in there, like Angela Davis is not in there, right? Like, I don't even need to know kind of thing, right? And then you speak of the, you talk about the Quran, like how many specifically like Black inmates have converted or have found religion as a pathway to their own salvation and liberation. Brother Malcolm is a perfect example, right? Like to have really redeemed themselves because they are in a system that, to your point, is not built to redeem, right? It's built to keep you in the system, right? And to Tyrel, your point, like once you get in the system and it has its claws on you, like the likelihood of you ever getting free is slim to none, right? Like one way or another, it's going to keep tabs on you. So that's why, like, when we talk about books, we're not just like everyone should be able to read, right? Like, we're talking about a weaponization. Like, we're talking about literature as a weaponization, as a tool of oppression. That's all, like, that's my extra little nugget. I wanted to like really make sure that people are hearing, because I don't want anyone to walk away from this conversation and just be like, oh wow, Xbooks is really cool. Like, this is serving, right, like a much, much larger need. This is when we talk about the different ways in which whiteness is weaponized against marginalized folks, and just how, mainstream identities are weaponized against marginalized folks. Like, it's in all of these different things. This is why I tell everyone, we all have a part to play, right? And so, like, this part that y'all are playing is so crucial. So I'm curious to know, like, because your timeline, it sounds like, is really like y'all are kind of like really ramping up and like making these connections and starting to see like, oh, y'all are on some fuck shit over here. So we got to pimp the system this way. Like, we got to play this game. So where are y'all at now in terms of, like, you have the vision, right? You have your North Star of like, we have to get folks this just basic access to all books, but we're running up against these roadblocks. And like, yeah, y'all want to do a lot of other things, but where are you right now in like your own fight to make this happen?
So we really have kind of a three-pronged approach to getting books in the hands of people. One is we're going to do these mass donations. So we're going to do probably 2 or 3 book drives throughout the year where we can call up the director of library services and say, hey, we're going to drop 5,000 books off with you. Like, meet us at the sorting facility. That's option one. Number two, and this is where there is a network of organizations across the country that are doing this kind of work that have been integral in helping us. And so right there in Berkeley, Prisoners Literature Project, they were kind of like the first really big nonprofit to do this. And they go back to the 80s, I'm pretty sure. And so they've been just incredible in offering help. Big House Books in Mississippi, just a bunch across the country. And so a lot of what those organizations do is start reaching out to individuals that are currently incarcerated and say, hey, we're this new nonprofit in Georgia. We want to send you books. What kind of books do you want? And so we're starting tomorrow with a letter writing campaign where we're going to start writing letters to people that are currently incarcerated saying, hey, we're Xbooks. We're brand new. We got 5,000 books sitting in a storage facility. What kind of books do you want? We'll send them to you. We're also, as part of that network of organizations, a publisher said, hey, do you want some books? Like, we want to provide books. And so I kind of went through and was just like, yeah, we'll take this, and this. Any dictionary that they had, we absolutely wanted. Well, they sent us 2 pallets of books. So they sent us 1,500 plus dictionaries, plus I think another 1,000 other books. Wow. And so as part of these initial kind of packages introducing Xbooks, we're going to send people dictionaries. We're going to, because we know that that's one of the most requested books for people that are currently incarcerated. A lot of times because of Malcolm X's autobiography too. And so that's kind of approach number 2 is let's start this individual correspondence with people. And then 3 is partnering with organizations around Atlanta. And so a perfect example of this is an organization called Common Good in Atlanta. And it is started by a professor at Emory here, Dr. Sarah Higginbotham. And she started to reach out to professors around the state. I want to say back in like 2010 or 2012. So they've been doing this for a while. And they teach classes in prisons. They also work with reentry facilities. And so as part of those classes, one thing that we talked about was, all right, if you're teaching an English class, Common Good can work with us and we'll help provide the books. We'll reach out to our supporters and say, all right, this is an English class. They want to read, XYZ, whatever book it is. Let's partner and have Xbooks be the organization that helps get those books into prisons. And so as part of that, it's partnering with independent local bookstores so that we're not buying books, marked up. We can buy books at cost. And so those are that's kind of our 3-pronged approach of let's start getting as many books as we can into the hands of those that are incarcerated. It was really encouraging and motivating to do that fundraiser and really important to do that fundraiser. But now we get to do our mission. And that's what I'm ecstatic about. So that's where we are today, to answer your question.
So I love it. Love all of it. Love the approach. And I'm going to take a left turn because my brain just went, that sounds amazing. And we know, obviously, y'all have the obstacles of like the warden and, all the other folks that are going to play good cop, bad cop, and this, that, the other. But the prison industrial complex doesn't survive on its own, right? It's called an industrial complex and a pipeline for a reason. There are policies in place to ensure that wardens can do things like really arbitrarily just be like, nah, fam, you can't read that, right? Like, and like an array of other things. So I'm wondering, just like before we kind of like start to wrap up and talk about, how my folks can support you and what you need, can we dive into the full judicial system for a second? Like my political brain is like, people should be writing at their local, federal, state, right? Like people need to be writing letters. People need to be making demands. People need to be our favorite line at According to Weeze is apply pressure. People need to be applying pressure because if we apply pressure to those that are creating policies and or in charge of changing policies, then wardens and others don't have the liberty to, right, like impose their implicit or very intentional and conscientious bias or, like continue to pull the strings of the design. So I just want to dive in real quick, and we don't have to like geek out too much because I will. I will fully geek out on politics, but I think we would be remiss if we didn't also have that bring that into the conversation.
So, I mean, the biggest thing there's a few big things that you see, and at least in Georgia, is that there's a limit on how many books someone can get. There's a limit on what books they're getting. There's a limit on where they can get books. There's a limit on how they can get books, and there's a limit on who can actually bring them the books. So I want to say one of the big things that I've recently been researching is that at some places they're pretty much using tablets, to where they're trying to move away from actual physical books. And with these e-readers, you pretty much would think, okay, they have access to like the internet. They have access to, you can buy like food from, you can buy food from it. You can do a lot of these different things, but the way that it's set up is that you're pretty much buying internet time. The books that you're buying are at an upcharge. The food that you're trying to save up for is at an upcharge. To even have the e-reader can be a charge depending on the facility that you're at. And it's like, it's the games that are played on these people, knowing that they have no other way to go and no other way to kind of maneuver, that is honestly just the sickest thing that's a part of it. So one of the biggest things that we're trying to find out is what are the best ways to kind of just pretty much stop this privatization of most of the system. And I'll just kind of continue to go on with the e-readers, is that one of the big things that they do is that they contract with Amazon. And in this contract with Amazon, they pretty much can only buy books from Amazon. So a few facilities won't even allow for us to actually give books directly to people that are in prison, because they can only go through this contract that they have on these e-readers to get new books. So
my neck is twitching because it's just one more reason. I tell everybody, like, just find anywhere else to buy anything.
Yeah.
Because aside from the way that Bezos runs his business and hoards his money, like the relationships that he has that support a variety of the arms of the system are just like, I don't have words. Anyway, I'm sorry. So just one more reason for y'all to stop fucking supporting Amazon. Please continue.
Just to add on to that point about like the local independent bookstores that we want to be working with, because yes, it helps us to be able to buy books that cost. The cheaper option would be for us to buy from Amazon. That as an organization, that is not what we want to be doing, and not what we will be doing. But it's also a way for us to support those local independent bookstores that are being actively harmed by Amazon. So I think that in these successful organizations, in the Prisoners Literature Project out in Berkeley, they work with a bookstore in San Francisco. And so they do book drives throughout the year. They'll do bundles. And so I think what we're going to see as we start this correspondence with those people that are incarcerated, we're going to learn, we're going to see trends, like what kind of books are people requesting. If it's all the same book, we can then go to, there's a bookstore down the street called Bookish that helped us get books. I can go to Kendra there and say, hey, look, we're seeing a lot of people request Asada, or we're seeing a lot of people request, Just Mercy, or whatever it might be. We can go to them and say, hey, look, it'll help you guys out. We're happy to talk about this partnership and things like that. But it'll also help us in kind of fighting that a little bit. And I think too, to like a more overarching point is, right now at the start of this nonprofit, there's a lot of things that we don't know. And I think it's really important for us to kind of have that mindset going into this and being open to adjusting and being open to being fluid as an organization. And that's one thing that I think is really important for us. Just, I'll be the first to admit there's a ton of things that I don't know about the system and about all the ways that the system is going to make this mission very challenging. And so it's really, really valuable for me to, one, keep learning and keep reading about it. Keep talking. I've been learning on this podcast, keep talking to people like you, but also I'm serious about that. But then also to adjust as an organization and to be adaptable and fluid in what we do and how we do it.
Yeah. Yeah, y'all are definitely going to have to like stick and move, be ready to bob and weave. Y'all are going to have to be on your Muhammad Ali because the system is definitely, especially the prison industrial complex, is absolutely, they're going to be like, I know what it says on paper, but like, no. Or like, see that one gray area? We're going to take advantage of that and we're going to flip that so that you can't help. Right. But to your point, Tyrel, I want to make sure that it's really not lost on people. The aspect of privatization and the way in which these policies actually only further exacerbate the disenfranchisement of incarcerated folks. Like, folks don't know that there are so many people that are eligible for parole, but they sit in prison because they have to pay for their own, for example, ankle monitors. You essentially have to rent your ankle monitor. So you mean to tell me that a person who has been in prison for X amount of time, who has no job, who now has a prison record, who's going to go back into the community, and because we don't have reentry programs or enough of them, and is probably not going to be able to get a job to pay for that fucking ankle monitor, it can only get out if they get the job to pay for the ankle monitor. Like, what? How, Sway? And it's because there are contracts, right? The parole board and the prison industrial complex has contracts with the folks that make the ankle monitors, which have contracts with the folks that make the GPS, systems and structures inside of the ankle. Like, it is all one very large system guaranteed to keep people incarcerated. It makes it super hard, especially if you look at the populations, right, that make up our prison population. They are typically already marginalized, whether racially or financially. And so the likelihood of them being able to get an e-reader, have somebody put money on their books to get an e-reader or get a book or buy some ramen, right? Like, whatever the thing is slim to none. And so it guarantees that it perpetuates the disenfranchisement that already exists. It's like a fail-safe of the system. It's like, oh, cool, you wanted to help? Oh, the fail-safe kicked in. Yeah. We're going to get you books. Oh, but you have to buy the tablet. Oh, you don't have any money, but that's a you problem. We made it accessible. Maybe you should just get some more money.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so if you're hearing this and you're like, what? Shock and awe. One, I suggest you go look into it a little bit more. But this is an opportunity for you to reach out to all of the folks, depending on where you are, because we actually have an international listening base, right? Depending on where you are, who is your elected official in your area? Because that is who you need to apply pressure on. The laws are not just arbitrarily created, and they can be changed. Policies can be changed. Measures and bills can be passed. And so while Xbooks is out here and all these other amazing organizations are out here doing really phenomenal work, it's our responsibility as a community, like as a nation of people, to try to make their job as easy as possible. And so how do we do that? We apply pressure on elected officials. Maybe you write your letter to the warden and ask them every single day, hey, warden, I'm just curious, why can't they read Malcolm X's autobiography? Just want to know every single day until you get blocked. Like, every single day. Maybe that's what you do, right? I'm kind of just throwing that out there, but shout out to anyone that does that. but so it's super important, right? Again, everyone has their part to play. So I'm curious what can we do as folks that are not part of the org, right? The first thing I'll say to anyone listening is, you can do the same thing that Xbooks is about to tell you to do to support them, to support any similar organizations that are in your city. So we do calls to action here at According to Weeze. So your call to action is, 1, find an organization closest to you in your state that is doing similar work, and then also Xbooks. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, Tyler, Shane, what does support look like?
That's a great question. So I'll go first. So as far as just supporting Xbooks, so our website is xbooks.org. The social media we kind of use primarily is our Instagram page. So it's X__books.
They'll get all that in the show notes. Don't you worry. They won't have an excuse.
So right now, the number one thing that we're going to be doing, and with this being kind of a Bay Area pod, we don't expect people to send books across the country, but
no, let us be clear, we really do have an international listening.
Okay, well,
sir.
Like international. So there are people in Atlanta, there are people in the Bay, there are people in South Africa. Like, you're talking to the world. So ask big.
It's books and donations. Like, we are going to be using this money that we're collecting, that we've already raised, to buy books, to work with reentry facilities, to, as part of this, we are going to be reinvesting in the organization. Tyrel and I met today with the Decatur Book Festival here in Atlanta, which has 30,000 people that come through it each year. So there's so many different ways that we're going to use our funding and our resources to achieve the mission that we've kind of set out for ourselves. But I would say those are the two things that we can use. And so it's books and it's funding. And so as you keep an eye on our website, that's where we're going to be announcing book bundles that we're going to be doing throughout the year. That's where we're going to be announcing partnerships with organizations like Common Good, where we're working with, reentry facilities, or working to supply books to classes that are taking places in prisons. Those are the main things. And I also think, right now, I keep coming back to this, as a brand new organization, and it's an honor, and I'm not just saying this, but like, it really is an honor to be on this podcast, because one of the things that we're trying to do is just get in front of people's eyes. Tyrel and I were talking about this before. Like, we are going to be shameless in asking, because we know we're doing something good at the end of the day. We also know we're doing something necessary and valuable. And so that's where you're going to see partnerships. That's where you're going to see our successes too. We just dropped off 1,500 books like January 1 to kick off the year. If you're in Atlanta, we're going to need volunteers. We're going to need people we want people writing letters to people that are incarcerated. We're going to need volunteers to help out on facility stuff. Like, right now we're in the process of looking for a facility so that we can stop paying for a damn storage facility. We don't want to pay that as a nonprofit. That's not where we want our money going. So there are a ton of different ways. We also realize that there are ways that we don't even know about yet. So if you have ideas, talk to us. Tyrel and I are more than open to these conversations, and we welcome them. So reach out to us. Our email's on our website, our Instagram, we're looking at constantly. So that's one outside way to support us, is like, help us, and not just monetarily, but if you have ideas, if you know someone incarcerated that would like a book, let us know. I don't care if they're in Georgia. We don't care if they're in Georgia. If you're wondering if there's an organization around you, I can help you find that organization. We can help you find that organization. But I think it's just opening up that correspondence and showing. If someone comes to us and asks for help or asks a question, if we don't know an answer, we'll find you an answer. And so that's what I that was a lot of different things, but that's what I would say.
That's okay. They could take notes. Tyrel, is there anything that you would add to that?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, we try and do good work, but there are other organizations that are doing this, and we wouldn't be alive if they weren't already doing this work. And so I would just hope that everybody, wherever you're at, find the organization that's doing exactly what we're doing where you're at. Make sure, and if there is no organization, just go ahead and start it, because at the end of the day, we try and serve everybody in Georgia, but that's not going to be an easy job, It's going to be no easy job, but there's people in Alabama that need help too. There's people in Florida that need this help too. There's people all over the world at the end of the day that need these resources that we're trying to get to people. So I feel like one of the biggest things that we try and show is that this just isn't a competition, but, we really want to serve everybody that we possibly can, and if we can't serve, we would hope somebody else can serve.
So here's a question.
Mm-hmm.
Have y'all thought, because starting a 501c3, as you know, is difficult.
Sucks.
And it takes a lot of time, and it's not fun. I actually now tell clients, like, do not start a 501c3. If you don't have to, find a fiscal sponsor. So a 501c3 that already exists, that's willing to like partner with you and allow you to use their 501c3 status. That being said, y'all have already done the labor. And what we know statistically is and it's, okay, again, by design, very intentional that starting a 501c3 is difficult, right? So I'm just going to publicly drop a nugget. Maybe one of the things that Xbooks starts to do too is become a fiscal sponsor. So you basically just become a partner for Xbooks locations in other states, because one of the largest deterrents to starting nonprofits and for people to actually community organize is how defeated they get in the 501c3 process. And so if you can, or if you know other 501c3s, that are willing to create that partnership, removing that limit, removing that access, or the barrier to access, could also be really, really cool. So I'm gonna just throw that out there for y'all. Because the number one question that I get from folks is like, well, what can I do? I want to start something, but I don't know what and I don't know how. If you have the energy, if you have the determination, if you have the the drive, and you don't know what it is, this blueprint right here has been built in so many cities and can absolutely be replicated. It is fundamentally not quote unquote difficult, right? Like, get books, give books, deal with the system. We're all already dealing with the system. So in one way or another, right? Like of whiteness, white supremacist, system. So I'm gonna just put that out there, because who knows, maybe somebody's going to reach out to you that is in Alabama or that's in Denver and is going to be like, I don't know what I'm doing and I have no desire to start a 501c3, but y'all want an Xbooks in Denver? Like, y'all want a Denver chapter? I don't know. Could be cool. But I'm just going to recap for folks. Again, your calls to action. 1, find a local org that is doing exactly this. Local meaning at least in your state. 1. 2, tap in with Xbooks. Especially, I am absolutely talking to you, all of my Atlanta and general Georgia friends that listen, and family, and larger community. And then you need to go tell your people to tell their people to tell their people. And then 3, so I have all the world's a stage analogy that they are very familiar with. Everybody plays a role, right, in the theater that is this production of dismantling white supremacist ideologies in the system. If you have the energy and the time and the tech crew and the marketing team and the costume team and all of these other things, but you don't know what production to put on, maybe this is the production that you put on. So tap in with them. They are here. Shane, you put it out there publicly. Y'all can tap in. They will tell you what they need, or they will point you in the right direction, or they will link you up with an org that is already doing it. Maybe you can just team up with them and help them grow. This is super, super important. Y'all, thanks for the work that you do. Thanks for filling this gap and this need. I can't wait to see how y'all grow and y'all really continue to fight this particular aspect of marginalization and disenfranchisement. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us on and for letting us kind of talk about what we're passionate about and what we're, to your point, what's going to grow and what we're going to build. It's something that I'm honored to be doing and honored to be working alongside the people that I get to work alongside. So to be able to tell more people about it is a dream come true.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Weeze.
You're welcome.
And shout out to Xander. I gotta say, man, he's done great work, and I just feel like I didn't say it enough. Shout out to Xander.
Right. I'm like, okay, wait. Is there anyone we need to shout out? So we got Xander.
I'll go through it. Xander, he gets more compliments than Tyrel and I. He does all the design and everything. He's incredible. Everyone's incredible. Xander, Hari, Zubair, Martina, Justin, Tyrel and I. That's the crew, right?
That's the crew. That's us.
Dope. Well, while y'all are the ambassadors today, shout out to the whole squad, the whole team. We appreciate everything that y'all are doing. And anytime y'all want to come back, just holla.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Beautiful.
All right.
Day. Thank you so much.
All right, y'all. You have your calls to action. Go do the things. And until next time, this has been According to Weeze. All right, y'all. That's all I got. But don't forget your action items. 1, join me on Podia, where you can get access to tons of BTS content, including a very special Weeze interview with all of our guests. 2, rate, review, especially a written review. Subscribe, like, and share this podcast with all of your peoples. 3, if you aren't already, go peep me on IG. Follow me there. And, most importantly, keep coming back. All right, until next time, toodles.